Hey folkies! The 6th of February, in principle the day I'm gonna release this video on, is the Sámi National Day. If you didn't know, the Sámi are the indigenous people of Scandinavia. They have lived for centuries in northern Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, Finland and a little bit of Russia. Throughout the ages they have been very badly treated by the different governments and by the non-Sámi people, and although their situation nowadays is much better, they are still facing many problems, especially environmental, for everything that has to do with their traditional way of life, reindeer husbandry, which still exists to some extent, but also just plain prejudice and old racism and this kind of things. So I think it's important to talk about the Sámi, especially when we live in Scandinavia, when we talk about Scandinavia in general, and especially on this day. For my part, as I talk about Scandinavian folk music, well, I want to talk about Sámi musicians. The main type of Sámi traditional music that is known is joik, and it's a type of singing which I cannot do myself, I have never learned, and I really would like to make a video about joik at some point with people who know it, who can talk about it, who can explain the background, history and everything, but for now I'm gonna focus on what I can do: fiddle music. So Sámi people have not lived like outside of society. They have been ostracized, yes, but they also have been somewhat included in the non-Sámi populations. And the influences have gone both ways, and many Sámi people have adopted a non-Sámi way of life, including about the music. So there has been, and still are, several Sámi musicians who don't play traditional, specifically Sámi music, but other types of music, all the other types of music, including the polskas, schottises, vals, and all that kind of stuff that I usually talk about. And today we're gonna talk about one of the most famous Sámi fiddlers that have existed, Lapp-Nils. Just a note here, keep in mind that the word Lapp is derogatory and is an old word that is not used anymore for referring to Sámi people. Yet when it's part of a name, as it's the case here, this man was known as Lapp-Nils, and the tunes that we have after him are called Lapp-Nils tunes. So I'm going to keep the name Lapp-Nils, but remember that Lapp is not to be used about Sámi people anymore. Lapp-Nils, his real name being Nils Jonsson, was born in 1804 in Uppland region in Jämtland. He started playing fiddle from a very early age, and when he was a teenager his family moved to Trøndelag in Norway, where he studied with various fiddle masters. In his early 20s he moved back to Jämtland and quickly became known for being a really good musician and was highly sought after. His playing has been described many times by many people. It was said, for example, that he would make talking people dance, but also dancing people stop and come to listen to his playing. There are many legends and stories about Lapp-Nils, one being that his playing was even more incredible because he was actually not able to use his left little finger because it had been broken by another fiddler out of jealousy. Ouch! True or not, we don't know, but what is certain is that his playing was really something. To understand how important Lapp-Nils has been for folk music in general, and especially the one of Jämtland, his native region, we can just have a look at the Svenska låtar, the most well-known collection of Swedish tunes, for the region of Jämtland and Härjedalen. So you open this very thick book, and the very first thing there is in the book, you have the title, and the very first thing you see is a text, a chapter about Lapp-Nils's life and music. So he is the folk musician, the spelman of Jämtland, somehow. And this despite the fact that he was Sámi, which was regarded as a low-class person at the time. Lapp-Nils was not only a musician, but also a peddler, so someone who would go from door to door to sell different items, notably Sámi ones. So he traveled a lot and became known not only in Jämtland, but also in the neighboring regions of Medelpad and Hälsingland. He even at some point traveled down to Stockholm, the big city, with his fellow Sámi fiddler Lapp-Jonas, and the two musicians played in the streets of Stockholm with their traditional Sámi costumes, which apparently gathered them quite some attention and success and money. So, yay for traditional costumes. When he became older, Lapp-Nils became very religious due to the wave of Puritanism that happened in Sweden at the time, and this led him to stop playing music completely. The violin at that time was said to be an instrument of the devil, and dancing was very disregarded by all this religious wave, so it's not a singular story, but it's especially sad that it happened to such a musician. It is said that he never played the fiddle again, except once when he agreed to play a few religious tunes. Lapp-Nils died in 1870 and is buried in Offerdal, where there is a commemorative plate, and there is also his cottage where he lived in Holland that is possible to see nowadays. This musician left behind him a huge legacy of many tunes that he collected and even composed, and taught to many students, and many people are still playing his tunes and loving them. Today we're gonna learn the one called Lapp-Nils Favoritpolska, so Lapp-Nils Favoritpolska. This is a polska in triplet, as is common in Jämtland. It has two parts and it goes in F major, 1 flat. Part A. 1, 2, 3. Even slower. 1, 2, 3. So for the little details, polskas in triplets, if you have watched the video, you should, are having this typical bowing pattern where when you have a triplet, you go down on the first note and you bind the two last notes up. This is not an absolute rule, but as often as possible when you have a triplet, you're gonna have this bowing. So for example, in the beginning, down, up, up. Also you have these two little notes. These two C's. You can either detach them or separate them with a little mordent, which is how I tend to do it, but it's really free. For double stops, as we are in F major, we don't have many good double stops, easy ones on a regularly tuned fiddle. A bit of A is possible. But that's pretty much it. Here you could have a D. But personally I tend to play this tune without much double stops, except like a few chords here and there. Now on to the B part. We start on the F. 1, 2, 3. And much slower. 1, 2, 3. Here, what's a little bit difficult is that the 2 bits of the B part are similar, but not as similar as we think. So the first time we play B, B, so whereas the second time we play B but then G. Also, the ending to me is quite unusual. I've played, I think, no other tune with this rhythmical or harmonic pattern. It's kind of unusual, right? And then I add double stops, so the first like half ending of the B part. With an E, and at the end you can either use an A, higher A, lower C, or lower A. They all work. For ornaments, you do pretty much what you want. I highly suggest that you check my video about Scandinavian traditional ornaments. We will have a lot of mordents, a lot of Swedish drills, and also I tend to put a few rolls in this tune, so in the B part or even in the A part. But that's really up to you. As usual with ornaments, it's really what you feel comfortable doing, what you still have time to think about, and what sounds good to your ears. So I hope you will have a nice time learning and playing this nice polska. Let me know how it goes for you. Let me also know if you have any other version of it. As usual with folk music, we can expect minimum 3-4 versions of the same tune. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, activate the bell, and consider supporting me on Patreon, where you can get sheet music for all the tunes I teach, early access to most of my videos, and behind the scenes content. Thank you very much to my patrons, by the way, and thank you to all of you who watched this video. I encourage you to inform yourself about Sámi culture, history, music, especially today, Sámi National Day, but also whenever you get the chance to. I wish you well, and I'll see you in the next video. Hej då!